In this video, I share techniques for being happy from the Tibetan Buddhist perspective, as well as the mechanisms for why they work. Hi, my name is David Piccarello, and I make videos to help communicate in non-technical language about the study and practice of Buddhism. These videos are for people who want to learn from a 2,500-year-old wisdom tradition, from somebody with 25 years of practice and study and a master's in contemplative religion. If that sounds good to you, let's go. We're going to be using a prayer as a framework to discuss this topic. And the prayer is, may all beings enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. So that's, may all beings enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. So let's start off with what happiness is. In this context, we're talking about the kind of happiness that you might experience when someone does something kind for you. For example, somebody remembers your birthday, or somebody gives you a present, or somebody acknowledges you and listens to you. This is more of a sense of warmth, more of a sense of just basic happiness, which is a little bit different, actually, I just want to point out, than the experience of the lack of suffering. So just because something goes away, we may colloquially say that made me happy because that bad thing went away. But here we're talking about happiness in terms of a sense of contentment, a warm feeling of acknowledgement, a sense of receiving kindness. And we're also not talking about some sort of great bliss, some amazing religious experience. And we're not talking about nirvana or enlightenment. We're just talking about some basic, simple happiness. It's also easy to give examples of happiness that are from the outside. Someone giving you a gift, someone being nice to you. But here we're actually, in addition to that, talking about happiness from the inside, a sense of contentment, a sense of warmth, a sense of love. So now that we've talked about happiness, let's talk about the root of happiness. So if you remember the prayer, may all enjoy happiness in the root of happiness. So what is the root of happiness? At its very core, the root of happiness is benefiting others. And what does benefiting others mean? So that means doing things for other people so that they enjoy happiness. So in some ways, this prayer, may all beings enjoy happiness in the root of happiness, is in fact the root of happiness, where you generate the desire for others to be happy. So we'll get into that in 1 minute. But the next question is, what is all in may all beings, or may all enjoy happiness in the root of happiness? So there are two different classifications of all, and they're both important. One classification of all is a spectrum between those people who are nearest to you. So people, for example, who are really close to you, and they have uncomplicated relationships. And so, if you are thinking to yourself, well, there are no people for whom I have uncomplicated relationships with, then that might actually be an indication as maybe why you're not as happy as you could be, because it's reasonably easy to wish those who you have uncomplicated relationships with a sense of happiness, because there's communication, because there's love, because there's mutual understanding. And in some ways, this is maybe why animals are so great, is because they can be pretty uncomplicated relationships. You love them, they love you, and then that's as simple as that. You feed them, you take them out for a walk, you play with them, and they're happy, and that makes you happy because you're making them happy. So think about not only those close to you, those for whom you have an uncomplicated relationship, but then there's the people who are close to you for whom you have a little bit of a complicated relationship. Maybe a certain aspect of your relationship is complicated. And then there are people who you're neutral towards. Those are people who, to be honest, maybe they're just you just don't really pay attention to them. They could be people on the subway. They could be people walking by you on the street. They could be coworkers who you never talk to. These are all people for whom it's important to include in this prayer. May all enjoy happiness in the root of happiness. And then there are people for whom you have like a real complicated relationship. People who you'd rather stay far away from you. And this is actually a good way of thinking about it. Like, there are people for whom you, you like, let's say that you politically hate, that are, that you're against, but in just bringing them to mind, brings negativity to your mind. There's also, maybe people who you feel like should be close to you. Maybe they're right in your inner family. Maybe they're in your extended family. Maybe they're good friends from, school, and they, you'd rather have them be far away. And so these are people who show up in this last category. And at some point, you can consider, if you want to be happy, taking a moment and bringing them into the circle of loving kindness, bringing them into the circle of wishing them to be happy and to have the root of happiness, meaning that they, in fact, bring happiness to other people. So for those who are all the way from those who are uncomplicated and close to you to those who you'd rather stay away and everybody in between, those are the people who you want to bring into this field of loving kindness. Next, we want to talk about this second category of what all means. This means people in all different states of mind. So I think some classic categories are people who are angry, people who are driven by an unquenchable thirst, people who are just ignorant, they just don't know, like an animal might be, people who are just full of desire, people who have deep jealousy, and those who are overwhelmed by pride. So the classics are anger, thirst, ignorance, desire, jealousy, and pride. And so if you can go through those and you can wish people, you might know some of these people, right? People in your life who are afflicted by these. You can imagine giving them something that would make them happy. And then you can imagine them turning around and helping other people. In this way, they're experiencing loving kindness. They're experiencing the root of happiness. And so those could be people who are close. Those could be people who are far or neutral. And if you can go through these two different ways, it really helps generate a full sense of loving kindness, which is really the root of happiness. So how does this work logistically? So I would sit in a comfortable seat and set your intention that you are here to generate loving kindness, that you are here to wish others happiness and the root of happiness. So start the process by reflecting upon all the kindnesses that you have received in your life. From people who are close to you, from people who are far, from everywhere. This brings you into the mindset that you need to be in order to do this practice. Then you can turn your attention onto others, those who are close to you, those who are angry, however you want to do the practice. And then maybe even write down those categories that I talked about, those who are close to you, close with a little bit of a complicated relationship, etc. And then go through them one by one and come up with a strong aspiration, and maybe even if you can visualize yourself giving them some sort of happiness, some sort of kindness. It can be visualizing them giving a gift, or it could be just visualize like a warmth, visualizing light, visualizing the feeling that it would be. I think it might be best to visualize them receiving it, not even necessarily from you, but from the world, whatever they need at that time, and then turning around and passing that kindness on to others. So you want to continue doing this visualization until you can see that they actually are happy. Maybe they're laughing, maybe they're smiling, maybe you can just see that they're lighthearted, and then move on to the next person. So this is an aspirational practice that you do sitting down in a quiet place without any distractions. And you can even take notes, you can journal, you can integrate journaling into this. And then, outside of practice, outside the cushion, if something occurs to you, like a memory happens, you remember some kindness that happened in the past, or you realize like, oh, this person could really use something, you can make a mental note or maybe a physical note and actually, bring that into your practice the next day. So in this way, the aspirational practice helps you start keeping an eye out for who needs what, and start thinking like, what would really benefit them right now. Because the next phase of the practice is to actually benefit people. This is a little bit different. It can take two forms. One form is talking to somebody and finding out what they need, and then giving it to them if you have the means. And so, interestingly enough, it doesn't cost anything to lend an ear. It doesn't cost anything to be kind. It doesn't cost anything to just be encouraging. But sometimes people do need things. And if you have the means and you can give them things, especially if that thing you're not using anymore, definitely maybe give that to them. But you don't necessarily want to be a doormat. You don't want to lose your autonomy. Meaning that if people have realized that you're being a generous person, that you're being generous with your time or attention, and then they start to take advantage of that, it won't necessarily make you happy. It won't necessarily even make them happy if you just capitulate and do whatever they want. So this is really about finding out what they need to be happy, not just what they want at that moment in time. So this takes a little bit of practice, because sometimes giving people what they want is not necessarily what will make them happy. Maybe in the short term, but maybe not in the long term. The other form of actually helping people is just to, in the moment, as you go throughout your day, keep an eye out for moments in time when other people need simple assistance. That might actually be, keeping an eye out to see if anybody, while they're crossing the street, is going to get hit by a car. Keeping an eye out for somebody who is at the cash register and they just need a penny, right? Just be ready to spring into action at any given moment. And this will make a little bit more sense in a moment, but I just want to sort of recap that maybe you can start off with the more aspirational practice. You start off thinking, how is this person suffering? What would this person need to be happy, to feel fulfilled, to feel listened to what kind of kindness do they need at this time? And then after you've sort of done that aspiration for a while, keep an eye out for in the moments where a small kindness can really help. And you may actually start noticing that people are doing this for you on a regular basis. And if you do it for other people, it could be a smile, it could be holding open a door, something as cliche as that. But if you are always looking for that opportunity, you actually start noticing when people are offering you that kindness. And so that brings us into the next topic. And the next topic is, why does this all work? So how does this actually make me happy, right? Like, this is all about helping other people. Like, wouldn't this just make other people happy? And so to answer that question, you have to ask the question, why aren't you happy already? And from the Buddhist perspective, the reason why you're not happy is because you cling to yourself. You cling to your identity. You cling to this being that you are. And then when things come along that go against you that go against your being, you fight against that, and it makes you unhappy. And the situation, for better or worse, is that the world is constantly colluding against you. Everything just is impermanent. So the things that you love today are going to be gone tomorrow. Maybe not literally tomorrow, but at some point. All of the things that make you happy in a temporary basis are just temporary. So the reason why this works is because it gets you to step away from that habitual tendency to be thinking about yourself all the time. And it helps you to start building a foundation of thinking about others. Not for the purposes of becoming a doormat, not for the purposes of losing your autonomy, but for the purposes of recognizing that clinging to yourself is actually what is causing you to be unhappy. So if you think about it, you might think to yourself, oh, all I want for my birthday is a new motorcycle. Probably not, but okay, maybe you're a person who wants a motorcycle for your birthday. And you think about it and you think about it and you tell everybody how much you want a motorcycle for your birthday, and then nobody gives you a motorcycle for your birthday, and so you're not happy. But that whole time that you were trying to get a motorcycle for your birthday, because you thought that was going to be happy, what you were really doing is fortifying this self-grasping. And this is actually a really subtle process, meaning that, how some thoughts are really noisy in your mind and some thoughts are sort of quiet. When you're falling to sleep, you have sort of like these really subtle, weird thoughts. When you're sometimes you have a thought and you're like, where in the world did that come from? Well, it came from, somewhere. It came from more subtle thoughts that you might not be aware of. And so this is actually a plug for mindfulness practice, which I can't go through right now because that would be a huge topic in just itself. But mindfulness practice is what you can use to really energize loving kindness practice. You can really use mindfulness to get to the root of some of these problems and actually become happy, because you understand the mechanisms. And the only way that you can understand the mechanisms is by actually seeing them happening. And the only way that you can see them happening, I'm sorry to say, is to stop and practice mindfulness. You can get an intellectual understanding of the process, but that will not actually bring you insight into how your mind actually works. So let's recap. Start off your aspiration prayers by reflecting on all the kindnesses other people have shown you. And then go through various categories and think about how you would want to benefit them. By what kinds of stuff they need in their life, physical, emotional, mental, that they would need in order to be happy. And then the next phase of practice is to actually keep an eye out to benefit beings. And all along through this practice, the practice of mindfulness is really important. So you can see how the mechanisms work for yourself. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. And I'll try to post a link here for my next video on how to be free from suffering, because nobody likes suffering. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.